And welcome one and all. This is the Renegade Football Podcast. It's like the league mixed with NFL primetime. With your host, Jay Lebder, a.k.a. Renegade 412, and Eric Haberly, the man with all the charisma. You can download SoundCloud on the Android or Apple Store markets to hear more of their podcasts. It's the Renegade Podcast, talking about some fantasy. Are they both legends? Well, they look just like a man to me. Facts and all the aggravation, drafting with some education. Renegade and Haberly, is the trophy made for me? T.O. with the popcorn, OSHA with the dance. I need the leagues winning, so pay me in advance. I got the ins and knowledge from Eric and Jay. What you got this week, guys? Share 'em my way.
What is up, Jay? How we
doing? It is the Renegade Football Podcast. We're doing an awesome show for you listeners. And if you are tuning in via YouTube, this is the NFL Draft Emporium channel. This is kind of our home away from home until we kind of figure out what we're going to do from an overall perspective with the podcast. So we are doing an interactive 10-person mock draft today.
And if you guys have not listened to our podcast, please check us out on SoundCloud. I am Jay's co-host, Eric Haberly.
Eric is my co-host.
Jay, we have our second guest.
Dane,
how are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. Are you ready? Are you ready to do this mock draft? Now, Dane, you're drafting right ahead of me. You're going to be taking all my players.
Yeah, probably. Sorry.
So what we're doing is we have a 10-person mock draft on Yahoo right now. Dane is sitting at the number 2 pick. I have number 3. I believe Jay has the 8th pick in the draft.
I am 8, and we are doing this off of your fantasy football league when we came together to just make sure that what we wanted to do from an idea perspective, but with technology being what it is, this is really cool that we're able to kind of stream this and kind of get a little bit into what we've been talking about this whole journey since the birth of this podcast. And it's, kind of just laying out what we, from diehard fantasy football perspectives, what we can kind of actually show you. It's one thing to be able to listen, but if you've done a mock draft before, this is kind of an opportunity for you to not only see Eric and I's perspective of how we would potentially draft. It's kind of seeing how other people that jump into these mock drafts and kind of seeing their strategy. Hopefully in this mock draft that we're not having a lot of people reach.
So the draft just started. Brian, some rando, is picking at number 1. Who do you think he takes? Probably Le'Veon. Probably doesn't even know he's drafting. I think he takes Gurley.
Todd Gurley.
Dane has the 2nd pick. Who's he going to take?
Le'Veon.
So he takes David Johnson. I'm sitting here with Le'Veon and Antonio Brown still on the board just because of a consistency, and AB is actually going to be in training camp. I'm going to take Antonio Brown with the 3rd pick.
Good pick. It's funny, Le'Veon, huh? He made such a big freaking deal about being this guy that's going to reset the running back market, and Todd Gurley gets $45 million guaranteed.
Le'Veon goes next, which it makes sense at that pick.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not, if you're drafting and you think just because of him not being at training camp is going to affect his.
Zeke goes at pick 6. Alvin Kamara at 7. I've noticed this a lot. If the first half of the draft's taking a lot of running backs, people tend to take them. Then DeAndre Hopkins is taken by Johnny. You're actually.
I am on the clock. Who do I go with? I've got Odell, Julio, Kareem, and Saquon and Michael Thomas in the first round. Based on the ADP, I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. I have a couple different guys that I've mocked here. I like Saquon for what I've heard out of Giants camp of what he's been able to do from rookie OTAs and then, finally coming in, signing his deal I think that he's going to bring extraordinary value to the Giants this year and to fantasy football, obviously, because of what he was able to accomplish at Penn State. Odell Beckham went after Saquon Barkley at 10.
Pick 9, now we're up to pick 10. I've noticed that a lot where at the end of the first round, there's potential if you're sitting there in a 10-person draft that Odell Beckham and Julio Jones might be there. If you're at that 10 pick and you're able to take Julio and Odell, I think you have to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
depending on other people.
It's so tough because, like I said, I'm on the clock at 13. I normally, my strategy can kind of fluctuate based on how the board falls. But honestly, with this is the guy I kind of like right now.
I actually would pick him over the receivers that were available.
Michael Thomas is still on the board. Johnny, our boy from Twitter, is helping us out with this mock draft. His name's Johnny Burtek.
Johnny just took Fournette.
Yeah, he just took Leonard Fournette, which is a great pick. Make sure you follow Johnny Burtek. Awesome. He does everything from basketball, obviously football, baseball. Follow him on Twitter at JBRTEK48. Thank you for hopping on, taking the time to help us out with this mock draft. He takes Leonard Fournette, which is a fantastic pick. They said that he dropped some weight.
So here's my thing. In a 10-person league, I want to get the best player at a position as possible, differentiate myself between some of the other players because everyone's going to have a great team. Since I have the best receiver, I now want to take the best tight end, so I'm going to draft Gronk.
Nice. Good pick. You said that all along that this is, Gronkowski's one of your guys, and how can you not make an argument at, round 2? He brings so much value in the red zone. And, from a targets, if you are in a PPR league, Gronkowski's going to be Brady or Tom Brady's number one target, especially with what they've had at the, they lost a lot of players with Danny Amendola leaving. Julian Edelman's going to be suspended for the first 4 games of the season, which only really leaves Mitchell and Hogan. Hogan did a nice job last year, but it's just over a 16-game season. It's just, I find it's really hard for that type of receiver to kind of take on a bigger role, such as a number one receiver. So we are at pick 21, and we've got players. Doug Baldwin still on the board, Mike Evans, Adam Thielen. You hit the running backs. You've got Devontae Freeman, LaShawn McCoy, Christian McCaffrey. In tight ends, we're looking at Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz still on the board. So kind of going as probably expected, not too many reaches from what I can see so far.
Again, I am doing what I said I want to do. I am going to take the best players at as many positions as possible.
Yeah, best player on the board, best player available.
The best player at a position. I have the best wide receiver. I have the best tight end. I'm going to take the best quarterback. I'm going to draft Aaron Rodgers here.
We check in at the standings. Eric is leading the mock draft with 777 points. Brian, I am at 8. Johnny's at 9. And let's see here.
And it's interesting too because Dan, what's your team so far?
I got David Johnson, Jerick McKinnon, and Travis Kelce. I know you hate Jerick McKinnon, but I like him.
I'm not as high on McKinnon. I like your first pick of David Johnson and McKinnon. So you want running back the first 2 rounds.
Just looking at the receivers available, I feel like they were all really solid, but I think I can get them going forward. To get a guy like Jerick McKinnon and the Kyle Shanahan offense, I want that.
Very good pick. Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be the bell cow this year. All right, so at 28, we look at
So some of the players after I picked Aaron Rodgers, Mike Evans, Devonta Freeman, Jordan Howard, Diggs. Jay just picked LaShawn McCoy. How are you feeling about that pick in the third round, Jay?
Bad.
Yeah, I would rather get because I'm not going to take Christian McCaffrey. I would have taken Zach Ertz over Christian McCaffrey. I just find that with Shady McCoy, with what they have at offense at a rookie quarterback, they really don't have a lot as far as an offensive. They lose Sammy Watkins. You don't know what you have with Zay Jones. Their tight ends are always banged up, so he is their offense. So I feel comfortable with taking him at 3. And then I'm going to come back around here. And see here. Alshon Jeffrey.
So Jay just drafted Alshon Jeffrey. You're not worried about the inconsistent numbers that he had last year?
I'm not.
Okay.
No, I think it was his first year. This is his second year in this offense. I think he has the potential to do big things, especially with Torrey Smith not on this roster anymore. Trey Burton is no longer here. He was one of their targets, I guess, for Carson Wentz. We know that Nick Foles is probably going to start the season, but he's a big receiver, number 1 receiver on the Philadelphia Eagles. So
Jimmy Graham just went off the board with a 36th pick. That's right around where I'm seeing Jimmy Graham go. Fourth round. Kenyon Drake, who everyone knows that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, we've had those going back to those Miami podcasts that we hit a couple of weeks ago. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
So this is actually a running back I really like. So I'm looking for my first running back in the draft. He's the first running back available still. That's Joe Mixon. He's going to be my first running back off the board, and I'm going to draft him.
Yeah, he's a good pick. You look at where they went. They get really stout with their picks this past year in the draft at offensive tackle. That's obviously since Whitworth left, they've been trying to kind of solidify that offensive line. Zeitler's no longer there. He goes to Cleveland Browns. And Joe Mixon had some off-the-field issues at Oklahoma, but I feel like with him being in this offense's second year, he's really going to kind of take on that bell cow role. I don't think Gio Bernard is no longer he's just kind of that change of pace back, and Jeremy Hill's no longer with them.
Dane, you just went with Darius Geis. Tell me a little bit about what you like about him.
He's going into an offense where he's going to be the guy. I mean, he was one of the most electric running backs in the draft, only fell because of character issues. I think he could blow up like Alvin Kamara. I mean, he can receive, he can do everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a fantastic pick. I think they did where he's at with his current projected points, 165 points. I think this is a guy that's going to just come in. I think that they just had so much inconsistency with Chris Thompson. Samaje Perine a really good complementary back, but this guy ran behind Fournette at LSU. Very physical, one-cut runner. I think he's going to be a lot involved with this Gruden offense, especially at wide receiver. We don't know what they have.
Russell Wilson just went off the board.
Russell Wilson. I like Russell Wilson. Best one. He was one of the best fantasy quarterbacks.
So Dane just took Golden Tate. I have Amari Cooper, T.Y. Smith-Schuster. I'm not going to take Juju just because I already have AB. So I'm going to go with T.Y. here.
Fantastic pick. They said that there were no limitations with Luck coming into camp, which is a good sign for Indianapolis Colts fans. They have rebolstered their offensive line, Quentin Nelson, and we kind of don't know what they have at running back. So I don't know. We've talked about Marlon Mack, but Johnny's coming up here pick 47, we are in the round 5, pick 7, 47th overall. He goes with Alex Collins, which is an interesting pick. Had a really good down the stretch the last part of the season.
That's just not a guy that I really find myself drafting a ton of. I don't know. I'm just not really excited about him for some reason. So I tend not to have him on my teams. Dane, what do you think about Alex Collins?
Well, there's just a lot of competition there. There's Buck Allen, Kenneth Dixon. I just don't know how it's going to shake out. So, I mean, at this point in the draft, it's just a good dart throw, but I think I agree. I don't feel real confident that he's going to necessarily be the guy.
Do you think his Irish dancing is going to affect how he plays this year?
It's got to be good cardio.
Dice, you got a good lineup. You got Golden Tate, David Johnson, McKinnon, Travis Kelce, and Darius Guice. That's a solid squad right there.
I dig it. Just got to get some wide receivers.
We're going to hit Eric's team here. Take a look for our viewers to let us kind of. Okay, so he went with Aaron Rodgers, Antonio Brown, T.Y. Hilton, Joe Mixon, and Rob Gronkowski. It's a pretty fucking good squad. Their rankings.
I like guys that score points.
I really like the Joe Mixon pick. I was going to take him if you did.
With the standings right now, per where we're at in the 6th round, Eric is 4th. I'm at 6. Dice is at 9. Johnny's at 10. But that's just based on what the projected points are. That really does not mean shit, really, come week 1, because that can all go to hell in a handbasket with injuries, God forbid. But let's see here, player.
So some of the players that have gone off the board. So I took T.Y. Tom Brady went. Amari Cooper, Deshaun Watson, Alex Collins. Jay took Juju. Then went Allen Robinson with pick 49. At the end of the 5th round was Jay Ajayi. Then came back with Evan Ingram. Then Rashad Penny just went off the board. So we're right in the 6th round. Jay is up. Jay, what are you thinking?
Ronald Jones the second.
Okay.
I like this guy's production at USC. He's a physical fucking bruiser. How he's going to translate in this Tampa Bay offense, we really don't know, because we obviously Doug Martin leaves. They've had some big problems at quarterback. Jameis Winston's suspended for the first 4 games. Fitzpatrick is going to come in, so you really don't know what you have with Mike Evans. And is Deshaun Jackson still on this team?
I think
Yes.
he is.
Okay, so you're going to have Deshaun Jackson, and you've got the great O.J. Howard connection, which is probably the most exciting thing if you were to ask me about the offense and how they've used.
And they also have Godwin, too.
Yep.
Drew Brees just went off the board and pick 57.
All right. Well,
so Derrick Henry just went. So right now I have Aaron Rodgers, Antonio Brown, T.Y., Joe Mixon, Rob Gronkowski. Listen, I need to look at running backs. A running back that would probably go in the first 2 rounds is still sitting here in the 6th round. I'm going to take Mark Ingram.
nice. And I think you and I have talked about this. Is he's gonna break out at some point this season. He's been suspended 4 games still. He didn't get that knocked down in 1 game. I'm sure he's probably gonna try. I don't know if they're gonna contest it or not, but he's too good to go any further. Kind of probably just.
Dean, you went with Brandon Cooks. What do you like about Brandon Cooks?
They didn't pay him all that money to not use him. So
Yeah, I mean that's an exciting tandem. Him and Goff. There's so much talent there. It's crazy. It's like this freaking dream team with what they have on defense. The biggest thing, though, is it's going to hurt them is if they don't get Aaron Donald locked up. I'm telling you what. I'm going to say this. If the Steelers can find a way, if they let that dude hit free agency, the Steelers got to grab him. get the 4-3 defense back into play, because I feel like that's what the Steelers defense is really missing.
Dane just took a really interesting pick. I really love Michael Crabtree for all the reasons that he probably does. He's the only receiver on that team. Joe Flacco is going to hit him up a ton. Me sitting here, I think it's a no-brainer. I want a guy that can catch 100 balls in a year. I'm taking Jarvis Landry.
That's a good pick. So the top of the pack, we got this Brian, who he has Russell Wilson, A.J. Green, Doug Baldwin, Gurley, Dion Lewis, Kyle Rudolph, and Demaryius Thomas. To me, there's too much there, too much uncertain there. Demaryius Thomas, you don't know how that's going to work out with the Casey Keene. Dion Lewis, we don't know. That backfield's a mess right now. Kyle Rudolph, obviously, he had a good year last year, but prior to that, really kind of inconsistent. Doug Baldwin, you know what you're going to get from him. And I like the Doug Baldwin, Russell Wilson connection.
So some of the players after I take Jarvis Landry, Delaney Walker, Trey Burton. Trey Burton, I think that's a little too high for him. Cam Newton and Sonny Michel. I like Johnny's pick of Sonny Michel there. I think Sonny Michel, there's, as Dane just said, when as far as Brandon Cooks, they drafted this guy in the first round for a reason. I think that they plan on using him a ton. Jay goes with the strategy that we've talked about on our podcast of taking Jacksonville in the 7th round, which I kind of expected. So
if you don't get them in the 7th round, I don't think, if you're enamored with them, as I feel like there's a lot of structure in some of my leagues where there's a lot of points that are given to the defensive side of the ball in fantasy, and Jacksonville's just going to be lights out this year.
So some of the quarterbacks, so Jay took Jacksonville at the end of the 7th, and it went Garoppolo and Carson Wentz. And then the guy that went with Carson Wentz, he also took Philadelphia. He's probably a Flyers fan. He's probably a terrible human being.
Probably. But he'll probably fucking
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'm not really kidding. But so we're starting the 8th round, and Minnesota went right after Philadelphia. It looks like a run's starting to go on defenses. We'll see if the rest of the draft is kind of deciding that. You go with Corey Davis.
Davis. Listen, this guy had some injuries at the beginning of his rookie season. Western Michigan. When I started looking at this guy, because I'm a big fan of the NFL draft, he runs routes like Antonio Brown. He's elusive like Antonio Brown. He's physical. He's 6'3". I think that this can really be a nice tandem with Mariota and Corey Davis in 2018. But that's my personal opinion. I think that they don't really have anything outside of that. Receiver-wise, you know what I mean? They lose Eric Decker. They have Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker's getting very...
Eric Decker didn't really do anything for that team last year anyways. No, it makes sense if they're... And this offense is going to be a little different. Denver just went... It's my turn to draft. I'll take a defense here. I'm going to go with the Chargers.
Nice. They're going to be stacked. They're probably going to be the sleeper defense. To guys like us, it's not a sleeper pick, but if somebody's just kind of floating around and picks them, they're like, okay, I got lucky with this one because they're just stacked. Melvin Ingram.
Dane just took Tyreek Cohen.
I think that's one of the most intriguing offenses this year is the Chicago Bears and how they're going to use Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen with the added weapons.
They said that they're going to give Tariq Cohen more looks. So,
all right, Dice is on the clock, and he picks Marvin Jones Jr.
So I'm looking for a running back right here. Some of the running backs are available. Coleman, Burkhead. I don't like any of these guys. I'm going to actually go with Marshawn Lynch because he's a starting running back.
Yep. Good pick. They addressed the offensive line with that Colton, forget his last name, but their first-round pick was a tackle from UCLA this year. So Gruden wants to run the football. Guy wasn't even projected to be a second-round pick, and Gruden pulls him in the first. So maybe he sees something that obviously that we don't. But we got Johnny coming up here. Let's review Johnny's team. Johnny's got DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, Leonard Fournette, Alex Collins, Greg Olsen, Larry Fitzgerald, Sony Michel, and Chris Hogan. Solid squad.
So I went with the Chargers. Then Dane went with Tariq Cohen. Then it went Texans defense on the turn. And then the guy that took the Texans defense went with Gostkowski. Dane came back and went with Marvin Jones Jr. I went Marshawn Lynch. Zerline went after that. Justin Tucker. We got a little bit of a run on kickers. Devin Funchess and Marlon Mack. Johnny took, and Jay is up right now. We'll find out who he takes in here in a second. I think Dane's looking at your computer screen to get all your cues. After you get your 2 picks in and there's that little bit of a gap, why don't you talk about the team you've drafted so far and what you like about them?
Okay. So I'm coming around with my...
So you just went Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, yeah.
And we're at the turning point of the 9th round. So Matt Bryan and Dan Bailey, the kickers are going. At this point, there's not really a kicker that I am crazy to get, so I'm probably going to wait until the last round. Robert Woods goes at the beginning of the 10th round. Jason goes with Will Fuller.
I think you and I talked about he has the potential with this newly rejuvenated offense with Deshaun Watson that he could easily be a breakout star. How many times are they going to target DeAndre over him? Probably a lot, but you would almost have to assume with a lot of good defenses in the NFC this year that Hopkins is going to see a lot of double coverage, which is going to open up Fuller's opportunity.
Talk to us about your team real quick, and then I'll let you know when my pick comes up.
Yeah. So I went with Kirk Cousins. I think he has a lot of weapons around him. I like what he's done in the past 2 years. If I'm getting him in the 10th round, I feel okay about that because I've already done my due diligence and gotten the playmakers that I need. Devontae Adams, we already talked about Alshon Jeffrey. I'm really happy with my running back core with Saquon and LaShawn. And then I've got Schuster. I've got a pretty decent backup in Ronald Jones II. I didn't draft him as an RB1 or an RB2. He's a backup.
Real quickly, so I'm up right now. I'm still trying to get more running backs. So I'm going to draft C.J. Anderson.
That's a good pick. I think he's going to have a really expanded role with him and McCaffrey this year.
Andrew Luck just went to Dane. I love that pick. I don't understand why he's even waited this long. I think as training camp goes on, I think his draft stock's going to go up.
Yeah. I feel lucky to get him there. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great pick. Especially with, like we had said, that he actually has an offensive line in place now that he can really feel good about. Brian Kelly's their center.
So Dane is a real jerk and took the other running back that
Kerryon Johnson.
I was going to take him, so I'm not looking for a player with high upside right now. I'm actually going to take Sammy Watkins as my next receiver. So,
tell us a little bit about your team.
So my team right now is I have Aaron Rodgers, Antonio Brown, T.Y. Hilton, Joe Mixon, Mark Ingram, Rob Gronkowski, Jarvis Landry. I have the Chargers defense, Marshawn Lynch, C.J. Anderson, Sammy Watkins. I like my team right now. I want guys that are going to score a ton of points. I think my team right now is a team that's going to score a ton of points, especially with Jarvis Landry and Antonio Brown. My running backs are a little questionable, but I'm okay with that given the strengths I have with wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback. Dane, how do you feel about your team so far?
I'm bummed it's just a mock draft. I like it so much. Andrew Luck's awesome. wide receivers, Golden Tate, I handcuffed him with Marvin Jones, Michael Crabtree, Tariq Cohen. I think he's going to be awesome. He could be this year's Kareem Hunt. I'm just pretty stoked on it. Kerryon Johnson, he's another one. Who knows? LeGarrette Blount's there, but that's a dart throw I'll take all day. I guess you were going to too.
Yeah, I just think that he's probably the most talented back. There's a reason they drafted him. So Jay just went with Matt Ryan.
Nice.
I love that pick just because of the weapons that they have. I think it's criminal that he's going in the 11th round.
Yeah, at this point for me, now that I've kind of gotten my foundation, I want to start building my bench just in the event of one of the more important positions in fantasy football, which is, God forbid, anything happens to my starting quarterback. I have somebody that I can feel really confident about. If something like that happens, I'm not going to have to go and try and put some kind of crazy trade together and, have my team held hostage. All right, so I am lacking a tight end right now, and I'm not going to do it. Every year I look at him, I'm like, he's going to do well. I'm not taking Jordan Reed, but I'm going to take Kittle from the 49ers.
That's an awesome pick.
Thank you. I think with the Shanahan offense, we're really going to see some exciting things.
So right now we're in the 12th round. Some of the top players still. Duke Johnson Jr., Sterling Shepard, Mahomes, Crowell, Aguilar, Phillip Rivers, Roethlisberger, Des Bryant, Julian Edelman, Jordan Reed.
We look at Johnny's team. He goes with Matthew Stafford. Of course, we've already talked about DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs. Some of his later picks, he goes with Marquise Goodwin with the San Francisco offense. We've talked about Nelson Aguilar. You never know what you're going to get from him. He had a good season. I still think Alshon's above him target-wise, and he goes with Marlon Mack. How do you feel about Marlon Mack?
I don't like him.
There's not a lot of...
Here's the thing. So
Eric's on the board right now.
I'm on the board right now. I'm trying to get back to out of this where I was at. So I'm just looking for a backup at this point, so I'm gonna draft Phillip Rivers here to back up Aaron Rodgers on my team.
Good pick. They're gonna be in contention for.
I mean they're talking. Getting back to more Marlon Mack. I mean I'm just hearing good things about Nyheim Hines. So I think that's really kind of undecided on who the running back is. Dane just made a really nice pick. He went with LeGarrette Blount to his Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah, that was a good pick.
Yeah, so kind of save his butt there.
Derek, we've talked about the RPO, the run-pass option, and this being a copycat league, there's so many complementary backs with the whole, what started as Mark Ingram, and then they implement Alvin Kamara, and the way that Sean Payton was able to use those guys, I think that you're going to see a lot of that this year. And I think LeGarrette Blount and Kerryon Johnson are kind of the foundation. This is the New England of the North, and
this is a pick that I'm going with just because I've heard a lot of great things about him. I'm going to go with Jordan Matthews here with Edelman out. I've heard a lot of great things from the New England media about Jordan Matthews during OTAs, and there's a really good connection with him. Not super crazy about his skill set. He might not be a player I'm throwing in there right away, but if I find the talent there, I'm going to be pretty excited about it and maybe potentially trade one of my well-known wide receivers for a position that I may need.
I think where we're at this 13th round, it's worth a flyer because he's playing with the best quarterback that's ever done it. And Matthews should have been a first-round pick. Came out of Vanderbilt 2014. He was really underlooked by a lot of players, and he did well his first year under Chip Kelly, but then kind of fell off due to some injury, traded. gotta look at my team here. What are we lacking?
So to recap, after I take Jordan Matthews, Roethlisberger goes off the board, Jameis Winston goes off the board, Deontay Foreman, Chicago's defense. Jay just took O.J. Howard as his backup tight end.
Yeah, I'm like I said, when it came, I waited in this mock draft to really address the tight end position because of what I had that I felt more confident about player-wise. I think I could really kind of use these guys as, streamer picks week to week to see the matchups. I think O.J. Howard is a fantastic player, fantastic at Alabama, warrant a first-round pick. It's kind of where he's at now is he's just kind of sharing time and targets with Cameron Braith. It's going to be interesting to see how they use him, but I gotta. He's too valuable to this team not to take Julian Edelman. And he can sit on my bench for 4 weeks. He gets back to Edelman form. I feel like it's a pretty decent pick. But we're with Johnny. We're going to review the standings right now. I am in first, 26.92. Dice at 3, 26.56. Johnny at 7 at 24.76. And then we got Eric, 23.81. But my numbers are inflated because I have almost back-to-back picks.
Yeah, you guys have already drafted more players.
We shall see how it turns out. Should be fun.
So I'm sitting here in the 14th round. I am going to take Geronimo Allison. I like the number 2 receiver in any Green Bay offense, so I think it's a no-brainer for me to draft him there.
Geronimo Allison. It's a good pick. He's one of those guys not a lot of people know about.
He's the number 2 wide receiver in Green Bay. I mean, how does it not make sense? Yeah. And he's big, so take him. You know what I mean? Like right. You're spending a second-round pick on Devontae Adams, and you're spending a 14th-round pick on Geronimo Allison. Get off of it. I'm taking him all day.
Dice with his last pick. Lutz. Good job.
I need a kicker. I like Jake Elliott. He hit bombs last year, so I'm going to take Jake Elliott.
It's a good pick. I was going to take him. I really like what I saw with that. What did he have? A 63-yarder last year to win that game.
Yeah.
It's kind of put him on the map. Talk about Johnny's team here. Thanks again, Johnny, for hopping on, helping us out. We have you with, since the last time we reviewed your team, you've picked up Chicago's defense, Kenny Stills, and you just drafted Harrison Butker. Whoever the fuck named that dude. Harrison Butker. Imagine going through life with that name. Harrison Butker. Harry Butker.
First off, he has 2 last names.
All right, we'll finish this off here. I'm going to go with good old The Wiz. Chris Boswell. What's his nickname?
The Boz.
The Boz. What do I call I don't know why I call him The Wiz.
That sounds like my guy.
The Wiz.
He's Jake Elliott. I mean, don't they put Wiz? Isn't that
Wiz.
Cheese Whiz on their cheesesteak?
I don't know why. The Boz.
Okay, now that we have the draft has now ended, so we can talk about our teams for a second, and we can talk about some of the things that we saw in the draft. If you guys want to scroll down to the first round, what are some of the things that surprised you in that first round that happened?
So from what I could see,
can you guys look at the draft order?
Yeah, we can go ahead and
if you
back.
If you go to my team,
right
you
up.
might be able to pick the draft.
This is you mean you want to see?
No, you may be able to pick up the draft results. Go to draft results and go to
All right, so we'll go down here. We'll review. If we look at it, it looks pretty on point. Nobody reached.
Nothing crazy really happened in the first round.
Dice, what do you think about Melvin Gordon?
I like him. I think he's kind of old, reliable. I don't think he's going to blow anybody away. But then again, I mean, there's not a lot of weapons anymore in that Chargers offense. So you got to figure he's going to get some touches, catch some passes. I like that pick, honestly, at number 12.
Yeah, he's for where I'm at, because not in maybe this time person, but I'm drafting 12th in my one league, and he's just sitting there. And then I've got like a few other options.
If you're sitting at 12 with Melvin Gordon, I'd say you take him all day.
Yeah.
I'm very high on Melvin Gordon this year. I like him over Kareem Hunt. If I were to draft in that spot, I'm taking Melvin Gordon before I'm taking Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just think for me, I don't know. I guess I just haven't seen that wow factor completely from him, meaning his full potential. He was in the same class as Gurley. Chargers take him at 18 in 2014, and I guess I'm kind of expecting him to turn into what we've seen from Le'Veon and the Kareem Hunts and the Todd Gurleys. He's been productive, but,
I think the thing that maybe shocks me the most is in the second round, actually, is probably Michael Thomas going to pick 206. I tend to see Michael Thomas going a little bit earlier than that, closer to the beginning of the round. So Michael Thomas falling out late, I think, is decent value. And then Keenan Allen falling right after that. I was sitting on the board at 208. And obviously I'm taking Gronk all day, every day there, just because Gronk is, if he plays, and I know that's a question mark, but Gronk played pretty much the whole season last year, is that Gronk is leaps and bounds ahead of any of the other tight ends. So if you have him, he is definitely a difference maker. Dane goes with Jerick McKinnon. Tell me why you like Jerick McKinnon over, say, maybe like an A.J. Green, Baldwin, or like even some more running backs that were still available, like Devonta Freeman, Jordan Howard, LaShawn McCoy. Why are you taking McKinnon over that?
Well, my thought process is kind of draft strategy. Where I was sitting there, Jerick McKinnon was a running back I liked the best, and there were still a lot of wide receivers I was okay with. In regards to why I think Jerick McKinnon's awesome, Kyle Shanahan just loves to turn running backs who maybe aren't even that good into RB1s. They paid him a ton of money. I know I keep saying that, but you don't pay these guys all this money to not use them.
Right. No, awesome. he took on a pretty decent workload when he was in Minnesota whenever Dalvin Cook went down.
And who's behind him?
Yeah, I mean
Matt Breida.
Oof.
Yeah, you can feel pretty confident with that pick. I think
the only thing that I worry about with McKinnon is he's a smaller back.
Yeah.
So I worry about his durability throughout the season. I agree with you. I just don't know if I'm taking McKinnon in the second round.
And the one back you brought up that, Jay, this was your pick that I reacted to, is taking LaShawn McCoy really scares me right now because the NFL's domestic violence policy seems to be if you're accused, you're out.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Shane McCoy's my
I didn't really follow. Like we had talked about it on the show, but he was in Florida. But if he set that up and somebody lets the cat out of the bag, that's really going to, I feel like that's really going to stunt Josh Allen's growth as a rookie because he's going to really have to rely on that feeding the ball to Shady 20 to 25 times a game.
And for me, honestly, it's not even so much that that the whole domestic violence thing. It's that, one, this offense has gotten worse with Tyrod Taylor gone. Two, their offensive line, they lost 3 of their offensive linemen. So, and McCoy's put a ton of miles on the pedometer.
So do you draft? So the next guy really kind of in that conversation is you like Christian McCaffrey.
I would probably take McCaffrey over McCoy.
Okay.
So right after, we'll get back to it real quick, that you went with McKinnon and Travis Kelce. I went Aaron Rodgers. You don't like Devonta Freeman or Jordan Howard ever?
Devonta Freeman, would have had me thinking about it. He seems to be pretty consistent. I just love that Jerick McKinnon is the main guy there. This San Francisco offense just seems like it's going to take off. They just seem like the wunderkind team right now. Jordan Howard, he's just kind of boring to me. And they brought in, I took Tariq Cohen, the whole theory being they brought in that Matt Nagy. He turned Kareem Hunt into the man. Tariq Cohen kind of seems like a Kareem Hunt kind of smaller back and catch.
That's a good point. I think that's a fantastic point. And we really don't know what to expect. As is the NFL, when a new head football coach comes in that is an offensive-minded coach, there's obviously two things that you have to accomplish. One in the draft is to build the foundation of that offense and the players that you want. And two is it's having that supporting cast to make that offense operate. It's really kind of the heartbeat. I like Chicago's offensive line too, and they have been building this defense, but from an offensive point of view, they brought in a lot of free agents. They've supplemented what they've done in the draft. So Tariq Cohen, it's going to be really exciting to kind of see him in his sophomore year, because it kind of really blew the NFL away and was really unexpected. And really, that's kind of how Jordan Howard was. I mean, who the hell was Jordan Howard before Matt Forte? You know what I mean? Nobody knew about him. He had a pretty decent year, but with these two guys in this started into the lineup, it's going to be probably, like I said, I think this is the most intriguing offense just because of the uncertainties of what you had said, what Matt Nagy was able to do with Kareem Hunt his first year as a rookie could easily be duplicated in year two with Tariq Cohen.
Something I want to state real quick. So I took the first quarterback off the board. The second quarterback off the board then after that was Russell Wilson, and then Tom Brady, and then Deshaun Watson. Exactly what I predicted on the podcast, Jay. They have Deshaun Watson ranked as the second quarterback on Yahoo, and I said from the get-go that the quarterbacks that are going to go ahead of him, it's not going to be it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson. It's going to be Aaron Rodgers, then it's going to be Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, in whatever order that is, and then it's going to go to Deshaun Watson. And honestly, I don't understand why Deshaun Watson is ranked so high. I think it's slightly ridiculous for only playing 7 games. He was electric, yes, but let's see who went after him at quarterback. Drew Brees? Are you kidding me? You're telling me you're taking Deshaun Watson over Drew Brees? I do you see why I think that's ridiculous?
Yes and no. I see where you're coming from.
Cam Newton. I also think Jimmy Garoppolo is a little highly ranked.
I think also and I say that, Jimmy Garoppolo is definitely ranked a little bit high. And kind of to that same point with him, his winning the last 5 games of the season. But my only thing with the whole Deshaun Watson argument is right, I'm not taking Deshaun Watson over Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady. But I think kind of why he's up there and he is intriguing is the DeAndre Hopkins factor. DeAndre Hopkins is arguably up there with Antonio Brown, being able to put I had DeAndre Hopkins last year in my fantasy league, and that I loved everything about him during that stretch. But that was just that was a very small sample size to your point. So it's really where you go before your picks. If you're drafting DeAndre Hopkins, it's kind of hard not to take Deshaun Watson between that 6 to 9 range. And I don't think he makes it to the 9th round. I think he's up there between 6 and 8, depending on how the board falls.
I mean, he went in the 5th round. I think that's just way too high.
But he's not going to last longer than that if you want him.
You're not going to be able to get him later. The only way you get him later is if you're in a draft that doesn't have a board like this. Like if you're in a live draft, you might be able to get him later just because when people go up and look at the board and looking at their sheets, they may go, I don't want – like they're not going to have a ranking of all the quarterbacks available. So they're just going to say, I want a Drew Brees over Deshaun Watson. I want a Carson Wentz over. So you may be able to see him fall a little bit later in a non-online draft. But in an online draft with him sitting on that screen in front of people as the top quarterback there, people are going to be like, I got to take him.
Yep.
So that's just going to happen. That's the downside about drafting online is a lot of the players that could potentially slip that are probably ranked higher don't, because Yahoo's really dictating where players are getting drafted.
Let's take a look at the players that are still on the board that weren't drafted, just to kind of see at each position. We'll say quarterback. I mean, this is kind of just as is because there's how many? There's 32 quarterbacks. You're taking 10, maybe double up. So Marcus Mariota, that's interesting to me because I think that he can have a lot of fantasy value because he is one of the more mobile quarterbacks. Derek Carr still on the board. People, I guess, kind of forget about what he did 2 years ago. And then,
Mitch Trubisky, I think.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people. Case Keenum, that's surprising, too. Case Keenum was...
Even if you're not, if you're looking and you don't have an opportunity to grab a good backup, these guys are all people that you could say, all right, well, even if I use them for 1 or 2 weeks, Des Bryant, he's going to get a job somewhere in the NFL. We're looking at the wide receiver still left on the board. Kelvin Benjamin with Buffalo wasn't drafted. We had said earlier in the podcast, Deshaun Jackson is still with Tampa Bay. He's still on the board. Marquise Lee. Isn't he their number 1 wide receiver right now?
He is.
So there's if Blake Bortles gets his shit together, there is fantastic value there. He's projected 147 points.
Cameron Meredith is still available. They're talking that he's going to be the second wideout opposite Michael Thomas in New Orleans. That's interesting. My boy Mohamed Sanu is available.
Yeah, he's number 2 in Atlanta. Did DJ Moore get drafted?
DJ Moore did not get drafted.
So that's going to be their number 1. I mean, if you're looking at Funchess, I think Funchess is their go route down the field, speedy guy. Kind of use him in multiple different roles. But DJ Moore is the physical, that was their first round pick.
This is the huge difference between the 10 and 14-person league. Because you're in a 14-person league, there are how many more players being taken?
Right.
So there's 150 being taken in this draft,
What do you think about Chubb, Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns?
I just don't know what – so this is what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to rely on Carlos Hyde, right? And I think if Carlos Hyde would go down, I don't think Duke Johnson's going to be the replacement. I think Duke Johnson's still going to be that third down back, that kind of gadget back, that kind of like Chicago did with Cohen. I think that if something were to happen to Carlos Hyde, I think Chubb jumps into that spot.
We got players. Theoretic, like I said, I think we kind of already illustrated that that's going to be more of the tandem of LeGarrette Blount, Kerryon Johnson, James White. Maybe James White has more of a role now that Dion Lewis isn't there.
But I think that's going to be what Sonny Michel does.
Yeah, he was a holdout in camp. That's the only thing with him is how that Belichick runs. He's stubborn. Ty Montgomery, Latavius Murray. So we just got kicked out. But do you have anything else to add? What do you think? How many leagues are you playing in this year?
Right now, I'm in 3.
Okay.
So
are they 10, 12? Mainly majority 12.
Yeah, I think 1, 10, 2, 12.
Okay.
So like this.
So this was a great opportunity for you.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't done a mock draft, I think you did a hell of a job.
Yeah.
Job well done.
Real quickly, something that I think should be talked about is the difference between a 10-person, a 12-person, and a 14-person draft, right? So the picks. So the difference between this draft at a 10-person versus a 12 or 14. So with that third pick, I would have probably taken Le'Veon over Antonio Brown. The reason I'm doing that is in a 12 and 14, more running backs tend to get taken. So I would have probably leaned on the side of taking a running back there. And then probably right before Dane drafted, I would have taken I probably would have either taken maybe like Devonta Freeman, Jordan Howard, someone like that, just to get those running backs in. I think the strategy changes completely when you switch the sizes of a league, just because it's a lot harder to get some of the running backs that I was able to grab in the later rounds that I wouldn't be able to grab in a 12 or 14.
I'd say quarterback gets inflated in 14-team leagues too, because you don't know if you're going to get a top flight one. In a 10-team league, I mean, you can just roll them out.
Yes, that's where you're probably going to see your Deshaun Watsons go a little bit higher than probably expected, just because. And that's when you really see, like, if you have a strategy in a 14-person league, that's when you can kind of really capitalize, because one player or one person, two-person can really dictate the course of how things are going to go, because it's going to start a run. Everybody starts to panic. You lose your strategy. You're like, fuck, what happened? And then that's when you kind of open up for more opportunity, and your outlook of where your team can really kind of take shape starts to form, because you're starting to get guys that you may have thought that weren't going to be there. I think Jimmy Graham's one of those guys this year, really, where you're going to start to see more of the skilled your wide receivers, running backs get taken, but we got to keep in mind guys like him are going to be having balls thrown to him by Aaron Rodgers, which to me, that's a really intriguing tandem this year. There's a lot of intriguing tandems this year, but
I just got my draft grade.
How'd you do?
I went on to my email and checked it. Well, I'm going to tell you my team first. Antonio Brown, Gronk, Aaron Rodgers, Mixon, T.Y., Mark Ingram, Jarvis Landry, Chargers defense, Marshawn Lynch, C.J. Anderson, Sammy Watkins, Phillip Rivers, Jordan Matthews, Geronimo Allison, Jake Elliott. Jay, Yahoo gave me an A+.
Boom.
I know what I'm talking about, bro.
Good job, man.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, did not do so well. My team was Saquon, Devontae Adams, LaShawn McCoy, Alshon Jeffrey, Smith-Schuster of the Steelers, Ronald Jones II, Jacksonville, Corey Davis, Kirk Cousins, Will Fuller, Matt Ryan, Kittle, O.J. Howard, Julian Edelman, and Chris Boswell. I got a C+. So there's obviously some room for improvement there. Got to keep mocking. Got some time to kind of work the kinks out.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, hey, dude, this was
what was yours?
Yeah.
What was your draft grade?
I got a C+ as well.
C+ as well. Okay.
So you are the master of the fantasy realm today, sir.
The mock draft.
Congratulations.